Hi, my name is Fernandez, and I chose to read the book Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson, which was published in the year 1999. This book is young adult teen fiction, but it is relevant to our class, and I will give a synopsis of it. So the book begins with freshman Melinda Sordino's first day at Meriwether High School in Syracuse, New York. She is considered an outcast and lost her friends after she called the cops on a party that happened during the summer. Her ex-friends include the group that once made up the Plain Janes: Nicole, Ivy, Jessica, and her once best friend Rachel. Right from the beginning, we learn that Melinda has a super negative view towards school and life in general, and she doesn't talk much at all at school nor her own home. Melinda befriends the new girl from Ohio named Heather, whom she basically just listens to because of how much Heather can talk. Heather's main goal this year is to find a clique that she can fit into, more specifically a group called the Marthas, who focus on helping around the community and volunteer during school. Melinda has no interest in trying to become friends with them, though, and finds solace in a janitor's closet at school. She decided that the closet would be her safe place and one she could visit frequently if she needed to get away. Out of all the classes Melinda's in, art is the one class that comforts her the most. Mr. Freeman, the art teacher, has assigned a year-long art project in where Melinda must draw a tree that shows meaning and has some kind of message behind it. She is mentally checked out from all of her other classes and has stopped completing homework assignments, which is odd since it was mentioned that she was a straight-A student just last year. Walking from class to class, she sometimes has encounters with It, a name she has given to senior Andy Evans. Every interaction with him makes Melinda sick to her stomach and makes her relive the night that they first met. As the school year goes on, Melinda becomes more and more depressed and starts to miss whole days of school, hiding out in her self-made home closet. Her parents and guidance counselor try to talk to her and see why she is failing so many classes, but Melinda remains silent. She bites her lips and nails ritually and even cuts herself with a paper clip one day to try and drown out her memories of that night. If things couldn't get worse, her newfound friend Heather has declared that she and Melinda were never friends and that she has devoted herself to the Marthas. It is now winter time during the book, and we finally get to learn about the infamous night that Melinda was talking about during the entire book. During a big party that was being held by seniors, Melinda had her first beer ever, and then some, and needed to step away to get fresh air. As she was looking at the sky out by the woods, a senior named, nonetheless, Andy Evans, approached her and started to flirt with her and even asked her to dance. He started to kiss her and asked, "Do you want to?" And before Melinda could answer, let alone comprehend what he was saying, they were on the ground. Melinda says no and starts to mumble drunkenly, but Andy forcefully kisses her in an attempt to make her stop talking. She is screaming loud and clear in her head, but the weight of his body on top of her makes it very hard for her to do anything. As she's trying to piece together how they even ended up on the ground, she feels pain being thrusted into her. The next thing she can remember is needing help and calling the police, which is how the hatred for Melinda Sordino began. Melinda begins to realize that she was raped, and from then on starts to recover from the trauma of that night. Her ex-best friend Rachel was asked to the prom by Andy, and Melinda is worried about Andy's intentions and doesn't want what happened to her to happen to Rachel. She finally decides to tell Rachel the events of that night, but Rachel doesn't believe her and claims that Melinda is just jealous. Regardless of how Rachel took her confession, Melinda feels a bit more free after speaking to someone. She even goes and visits the place where that night happened and vows to start taking better care of herself. She takes up new hobbies and begins to reconnect with her former friend Ivy. The school year is ending and Melinda is in her closet taking down her safe space when Andy traps her and locks the door. Andy wasn't very pleased to hear rumors of him raping a girl and tries to claim that she wanted it and he tries to start kissing her. Melinda is able to free herself and scream no, something she wishes she had done the summer before. Andy hits Melinda in the face and ensues a struggle, but Melinda grabs a hold of a piece of glass and threatens him by holding it to his throat. She escapes, and her only task left is to finish her tree. What once was a stick tree now turned into a tree that is blooming and has healthy roots reaching for more life. She cried as she turned her tree in, knowing the project followed her throughout her journey of freshman year, and decides to share what happened to her to Mr. Freeman. So this book had a ton of symbolism in it, like so much that I could not cover it. So like the main thing I want to focus on is the symbolism regarding Melinda and just what she all went through, with the main example of using the tree. Um, so she blindly drew the word out of a globe, and she was super disappointed because she saw a tree as simple and easy. She starts to draw her second grade version of a tree, which is the tree she's always drawn, and realizes that putting emotion in a tree is going to be a harder task than she thought. Her initial thought of thinking that a tree is too simple can be compared to how she was once viewed in school before the incident, a plain Jane. She starts to doodle trees in her other classes, thinking about how hard it's been sketching a tree into a linoleum block. Quote, "The problem with the block is that there is no way to correct mistakes. Every mistake I make is frozen in the picture, so I have to think ahead." Unquote. I immediately thought of life from this one picture, because isn't that what life is? Making mistakes that you can't take back and learning that you should think before you act. Everyone is going to have mistakes in their life. It's inevitable. But what you do with those mistakes is the important thing, and Melinda is learning that she needs to think through her decisions a little more carefully so she can try to avoid them. During Melinda's Thanksgiving, her turkey went through some turmoil, and she decided to have a memorial for it by taking the bones to art class. She glues the bones to a block of wood and arranges them as if she was at an exhibit. She glues knives and forks on the bird to make legs and sets a Barbie doll head with her mouth taped shut on top of the bones. Even though it's not a tree, it still has a lot of symbolism in it because what she makes is described as scary and is something you wouldn't want to look at for long. Her art teacher studies it seriously, making Melinda nervous, but finally ends his silence by saying, quote, "This has meaning. Pain." Unquote. I think with just that one quote alone, it says a lot about what her drawing showed, which is what Melinda was feeling on the inside. Even though she probably didn't feel physical pain 24/7, her subconscious is in so much pain that she didn't even mean for her project to turn out the way it did. This shows us how powerful our minds can be, especially when we don't even think they're being used. She even mentions later in the book that she can picture, quote, "a strong old oak tree with a wide-scarred trunk and thousands of leaves reaching to the sun," unquote. But when she tries to carve it, quote, "it looks like a dead tree, toothpicks, a child's drawing," unquote. She can't bring it to life because she is the tree and she feels dead inside, so it shows in her drawings. So knowing how much pain Melinda is in through her thoughts and actions in the book and through her drawings, I was curious to see what the actual statistics were for the after effects of being raped or sexually assaulted. So it's impossible to know how many people have actually been raped or sexually assaulted because it's something that has to be reported, and from what we've learned in class, it doesn't happen as much as we would think. Even though we can't get an exact number, researchers have configured that, quote, "1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men will be raped at some point in their lives," unquote. According to the analysis of the Census Bureau's March 2016 current population survey, there were 162,663,500 females in the United States. So if we take the first statistic and apply it to that number, that would mean 32,532,700 females were raped last year as of March 2016. That's a sickening statistic, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around it. Almost 1/3 of all rape victims develop post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, at some point in their lifetime, and more than 1 in every 10 rape victims still have PTSD today. PTSD occurs after a traumatic event has taken place and is very common among those who go to war, those who were in like a terrible accident, and those who have been sexually assaulted, and of course many other scenarios. But depression is also common and accompanies PTSD many times, and it is said that, quote, 30% of rape victims had experienced at least one major depressive episode in their lifetime, unquote. So it makes sense that Melinda starts distancing herself and stops doing the things she once did, because those are the things that come with depression and PTSD, which she obviously had. Most people think she would need to get help, and that is one thing I wish she would have done, is reported the crime or at least talked to someone. But that's another reality the book covers. Quote, Rape is the most underreported crime. 63% of sexual assaults are not reported to the police. Unquote. Luckily for Melinda, she was able to recover on her own. Slowly, but she was still able to overcome her traumatic experience. We can see that this in the last section of the book when Melinda turns her final project in of her tree. Quote, "My tree is definitely breathing. Little shallow breaths like it just shot up through the ground this morning. This one is not perfectly symmetrical. The bark is rough. Roots knob out of the ground and the crown reaches for the sun, tall and healthy. The new growth is the best part." Unquote. That last line of the quote really brings together the symbolism of the tree and Melinda. Melinda has finally spoken out about what happened to her and has grown so much from this experience that she is free to grow and speak as she pleases. Well, that wraps up my presentation, and I just want to apologize to whoever has to watch this because of the tree moving over and over. I'm really bad with technology, didn't know how to stop it, but my apologies. I hope you enjoyed my synopsis of the book Speak.